Good. What I want to talk about today is an interesting topic within sort of popular legal theory within the UK, and that's how, why, when, and could we reinstigate the death penalty within the UK? It was abolished in the 60s. You can Google the history on it, but the fact remains, I think the vast majority of people still support the death penalty for the most serious crimes on the book. So I think it goes without saying that most people would support the death penalty for murder, rape, other sexual offences like pedophilia, sexual trafficking, probably human trafficking as well, slavery, modern slavery rather, probably treason as well, various espionage offences, and maybe things like drug pushing, drug production, grooming, who knows, maybe even misfeasance in public office. So arson, maybe serious theft, large-scale fraud. If you think about all these very large fraud operations where hundreds, if not thousands, of lives are destroyed, these are the kinds of crimes that we would usually ascribe to warrant the death penalty. Of course, now what we have to understand is that the death penalty is a sentence, which means it's the end of a process of the application of the law to the crime. So you've got this whole long process, and the final bit, well, it's not really the final bit, but as far as the courts are concerned, is when the judge prescribes the punishment laid down by law that what's the phrase? That he has discretion to modify as well. So, the primary objection to the death penalty, and it is actually a valid objection. I can't remember who said it, but the argument goes, it is better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man be hanged. Namely, what if you get it wrong? What if you send innocent people to the gallows? And that's a valid argument, because we have seen historically that there have been very prominent setups of people who have been convicted on flawed evidence, people who've been convicted on faulty testimony, fake confessions. So that is the most legitimate criticism of the death penalty, is that you cannot appeal the sentence once it's been administered, unfortunately. Now, some people might be okay with that. Some people might say, what was the example? Collateral. Well, that's all good and well, but you could have sell it to the guy's mother. Oh yeah, Jimmy didn't really, plant a terrorist bomb, but his death was necessary for the greater good of the program of judicial executions. It's not going to work. So what do we do then? Well, we've got problems with the police. We've got problems with the CPS. I think the CPS is a bigger problem than the police, because it doesn't matter how good the police are in this country. If all of their hard work and evidence that they acquire is then given to the CPS, and the CPS is completely corrupt and incompetent, what's the point in gathering it? The CPS says, sorry, we're not interested in prosecuting theft anymore for obvious political reasons. The police are rendered useless. So the CPS really needs looking at and needs as much scrutiny as the police force, I'm afraid to say. But if I had my way, if I was reinstigating the death penalty, I would put in a series of other safety precautions to ensure that the innocent are not done away with. I would put in a new standard of evidence. So in the UK, we have two standard of evidence. We have balance of probabilities, and which is usually attributed to or used in civil law, and of course beyond reasonable doubt. I would say that in order for the death penalty to be applied, the jury would have to not only find the person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but have some kind of absolute certainty beyond any doubt. There is no other explanation for this person's guilt other than that they did it. That makes sense. So, and if they find them guilty on the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, but they're not 100% sure, they're 99% sure, but they're not 100% sure, then it's life in prison, or whatever the appropriate punishment is, until more evidence is found, of course. So I would do that. You could argue you might want to take the sentencing out of the judge's hands. Judges will be very, very reluctant to, if they're given a choice, to apply the death penalty because they don't want to be political. But if it's mandated via statute, so the juries find them guilty to the appropriate level, the judge by law has to sign the death warrant. That's kind of how I would do it. I mean, you could do it with sentencing courts. I think our judiciary is too timid, too afraid of being political. So if they can just blame it all on the jury, we're not condemning this person to death, the jury did. That would be enough for them to soothe their consciences. What else? In some states in America and other places, there's like mandatory appeals. So the appeals are free. That's fine. A period of appeals. This thing of keeping them on death row for decades, again, I think is problematic, because in a lot of cases, these guys actually outlive the families of the victims. So it's another problem. So we've got a list of crimes. We've got a system in place to ensure that the person is executed, and it's really a choice of the jury. You could have another thing where the jury find them guilty to the first standard beyond reasonable doubt, but they might suggest the death penalty, and the judge has the discretion to ignore it or not. They would almost certainly ignore it. Go back to a life tariff. What do we do with them then? Well, what are the modes of execution? Breakneck hanging, electrocution, poison gas, intravenous poison, firing squad, beheading, the guillotine, or whatever the Saudis do, the old hatchet. There's another one. Oh, the garrote. This is I think it was used in Spain, or through Franco's years, which is basically they're on the chair. There's like a wire put around the throat, and there's a lever behind it, and they spin the lever, and it instantly knocks them out, because it basically just cuts off the blood to the brain, and they choke basically, and then they die. There's another form of execution. Humane forms of execution. Now, you could argue whether they're humane or not. I don't think electrocution was ever humane. There's problems with the gas chamber as well. But I think those are the main historic ones. The problem is killing people ain't as easy as people think. Hanging is the traditional method we used in the UK. Breakneck hanging, trapdoor hanging, that is really a lost art form. I don't think we know how to do it anymore. The reason why it's a lost art form is it took a lot of skill to create a rope relative to the condemned's body weight that would have enough, what's the word? Not elastic, the opposite. Tension when the rope locked, that it would break the neck, but enough elasticity in it that it wouldn't actually tear the head clean off. And that's actually a problem with trapdoor hanging. It would, and it is documented, it would actually clean someone's head clean off. When the aim was to break the vertebrae. Of course, the other problem is if there was too much elasticity in the rope, it would absorb the energy and it wouldn't break the person's neck, and then they got a slow contortions and fits of asphyxiating death. And because the rope wasn't at the back of the neck, it was to the side, it would actually be a very slow and inefficient means of constricting blood flow and denying airflow. So it was a real professional skill. I mean, I think the rope they would use a new rope every single time. I think it was made out of hemp or something. They would boil it to soften it up, and then soak it in tar to prevent it from fraying and weakening. And there was some formula in relation to the weight of the individual and the fall and that sort of thing. So it's not the sort of thing you could just revive overnight. Other things, poisoning them, gas, electrocution, I don't think it is applicable. Beheading, yes, it works, but it's messy. Blood goes everywhere. I think that the easiest form of execution that would be available if this was brought back is the firing squad. Two 2.5 millimeter, not 2.5, 25 millimeter rounds in the chest. It'll hollow you out. The shock of that alone would put them out and kill them damn near instantly. That's the simplest way to do it. Just get some, very easy to do, just get some retired SAS, Special Forces guys, foreign mercenaries. We don't lack for people with killing experience in the UK. 2 rounds to the chest and it's done. Much cheaper than elaborate, slow-acting poisons and things. In fact, you could poison them. You could give them a very heavy sedative, open up a vein, put a bucket under them, and let them bleed to death. They won't know anything about it. Again, messy. So that's what I would do. I'd have them shot. Oh, just to add, the human rights issue isn't a concern. I think there's the human rights law, from memory, bans extrajudicial killing, but not legal killing in the form of execution. So the human rights mob could easily be silenced. The Human Rights Act is not entrenched. I'll talk quite the opposite, in fact. So that's not a problem. What it would do, though, is it would create an entirely new industry of execution prevention solicitors firms. And these would be, we know they are, these would be the the do-gooder brigade. Oh, don't put little Jimmy to death even though he raped 20 women. Oh, think of his point of view. You know what I'm saying. There'll be a whole new industry, and it is an industry. Okay, all of these major liberal charitable causes, they're all businesses. They're businesses first, they're businesses second, and their charitable causes third, if that. Of course, they don't ever want to succeed, because if they succeed, they don't need to exist anymore. That's why they never work. So yeah, that kind of industry would crop up. But I think if the evidence is higher than a standard murder case, that would probably rule out almost any chance of mistake. And yes, we did make mistakes in the 60s, but bear in mind the most sophisticated form of forensic evidence at the time was things like fingerprints. Now, forensic science has just exceeded in ways we can't even imagine. Yeah, so that's what I would do with that one. Another interesting issue with the reinstitution of the death penalty would be its potential retroactive applicability. So we've got a lot of people in prison, or those who've left prison, I might say, who've been let out, who would warrant the death penalty but are just rotting in jail. There is nothing that prevents the application of the law retroactively if a statute enables it. And I would say that, we got infamous child murderers and rapists and serial killers in jail. and I think they deserve the firing squad. Their argument that it's wrong to change the law retroactively, I think is quashed by it's wrong to let these people live, considering all the mayhem they've caused. The fact that they haven't been executed is an injustice, which is to be corrected. And they deserve justice, don't they? They have a human right to justice. So the retroactive applicability of the death penalty is something, because we've got a big backlog to deal with. If you've got people that are utterly guilty, like, I don't know, the Moors murderers and that wife of, what's his name, Fred West. I don't know if she's still alive or not. But the list goes on and on. Lots of convicted terrorists and things. Why not? They still deserve death penalty. Now, traditionally, we don't really like retroactive law in the UK, but it does happen where there is good ground to do it. So, for example, the criminalisation of German war criminals in the Second World War, I forget the act, in 1990 something or other, nobody complained about that, because it's obvious these people are guilty. The fact that the law couldn't process them at the time is irrelevant. It's obvious that what they did were atrocities. So we wouldn't just have new criminals to send to the hot place. We'd have a backlog of thousands of others to process as well. So that's something to think about. Hope that helps. Leave something in the comments. Yeah, I think I'll do.